everybody, welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, and Disembodied Hands, Quinty, Disembodied Beard, John, and Kiki, who I've distracted with toys in an attempt to get her to be a good girl during the stream today. So maybe she'll make an appearance later. Quinty, thank you for the resub of 27 months. It's kind of funny when you go to start the stream and you're like, oh no! Polly, thank you for the Prime sub 17 months. And Kerniko, bringing the hammer down on both of you with her 50 months. Yeah. That is almost 20 dragons worth. That's funny. Hello, everybody. Oh, man. Let's see here. We'll just get straight to business today. It's good to be back. It's good to be back. I posted up my, for my patrons, and for those who are thinking about being patrons. Remember, I have a free level. But for my patrons, all of them, even the free people, you get early access to my fundamentals of mini painting videos. And I just posted up the newest one yesterday. It's prep work. So many of you will have seen a lot of what I've been doing, what I'll be doing in that before, and you're all familiar with it, but it's just kind of a nice summary. I'll be doing a companion PDF for my $2 level so that everybody has it in one handy place. So, including things like whether to wash, whether not to wash, what to use to wash when you're washing models, stuff like that. Hi, Keeks. Are you ready to say hello to the stream? Are you ready to say hello? Come on up. No, you don't want to. You just want pettins? Okay. Okay. Pettins. Pettins. There you are. Yeah, my good girl. Aren't you my good girl? I started giving Kiki treats yesterday for just doing good stuff like lying down at my feet and being a good girl. And we also started scent training, which is a modification. We already kind of played Find It with her. Yeah, hello, pretty girl. You want to come up? Sure you don't want to come up? Okay, there we go. We've got a Keeks. Good girl. Good girl. Yeah, say Kiki. Good girl. Okay, come on. Good girl. Thank you. Okay, go settle now. Well, I talk about knives, files, and clippers, oh my. Yes, unabbreviated Kiki. But yeah, so just general, it's good to have it for new people. I know a lot of new people watch my videos, so it's good to have it out there. What I'll be doing, I was essentially doing the, when I put up a new video for the Patreon, I was taking the previous month's video off of unlisted and making it public on YouTube. But I intend to be doing at least 2 videos a month, so essentially that means I'll still follow that cycle, but it means you might get early access for 2 weeks instead of a month or stuff like that. We'll see how much I can do. My goal is really to do a lot of YouTube if I can fit it into my schedule. The faster I can build up a giant glom of videos for people to watch, the faster I get to monetization. So we all know that we like that. So that's my goal, along with all the other goals. The nice thing is that it also works out with just giving you guys more Patreon content. So, hey, Prince Paradox. Yes, so if you want to see my new video on prep work early, then just patron me. You can be free. I don't care. I like all my patrons. And I believe you do still get access to the Discord with the free. I don't remember. I think so. I think you count as part of my community, so it should. All right, so we're working on this barbarian. We decided to make him a vampire type, so that's why he is in kind of the weird greenish almost skin tones. We did do a lighting effect, so we did do kind of a dramatic kind of thing with him as far as his highlights and shading. I'm going to... Well, John has lots of skills, though. You should ask him to dance. He's quite an elegant dancer. He told one of us, I think it was Sadie, he had no grace. I have no grace either, so dancing is not my forte. But anyway, so we're going to be using the Zenith Prime to try to preserve some of that dramatic lighting and shading. EU usually, it's a little less successful on 28s often. It's a lot, it tends to carry a lot better on bigger models, so using it on a giant might be more effective if you're trying to do dramatic lighting and shading. The best example of that, of course, is Mr. Rock Troll, who I did do dramatic lighting and shading on. And as a very large model, it was much easier to carry this off and to make it look right. Oh, you can braid beards. Well, damn. we need a beard braiding stream, obviously. But yeah, so what we're trying to do on this guy is this is essentially less expecting it to look super dramatic like Mr. Troll because of the scale, but it's good practice for that, and it's good practice for where to place your highlights and shadows and how much you necessarily want to. Like maybe we won't highlight this sheathed dagger very much because you can see the haft of the axe above it is directly blocking the light shining on it. So that kind of thing. We did decide on purple for some of as it is kind of an accent color, although technically the red is the accent color. So what I can do now is figure out where else to put this purple. And all of our colors are being mixed from a limited subset. We've got a red, a yellow, and a blue, as well as a black and a white. Our black is brown liner, although I believe I did use some pure black on this guy, like for his hair. But otherwise, I'm going to create my darks more with the liner. The pure white is my white. So essentially we're doing primaries plus black and white, right? So what you should learn from this is when you're doing limited palette schemes, you can use a red, yellow, blue that are totally not primaries, as well as, I could technically be using something like Osirian Sand over here and use an off-white. I usually will choose based on what it will do, like when mixed with others. You have no grace. Yeah. Yes, quite an insult. It's true. So my brown liner, I know when mixed with magenta makes a really interesting, like, kind of purple brown. It's really a pretty color. I really like it. And I know my Necromancer purple has a lot of magenta in it. So I know there's some potential for creating interesting shades with these colors, which is why I would choose the brown liner. If I chose the blue liner, I'd be able to do purples more, and I'd be able to create a different sort of a more vibrant dark blue, right? So depending on the model, that's how I would switch out my choice of a pigmented dark. So doesn't Daffodwear usually come in a little later? But anyway, so that's what we're doing. Obviously, my purple is a mix of my Necromancer and Sharkbite. Sharkbite is a pretty pure blue. It has a little bit of black, a little bit of white, and it does have a bit of green in it as well. The green, however, is canceled out by the magenta pigment in the Necromancer purple. If you mix phthalo green and magenta, you actually get a blue. It's a muted blue, but it's still a blue. So that's how we can come up with a purple that's actually fairly vibrant. I also was cheating on my color scheme a little bit. I did use fire red for some of this. So just because I wanted to pop, I wanted that red accent color to pop a bit because vampire. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to figure out where else I want that purple. And then I'm going to figure out what kind of browns I can mix with this for leather and stuff. Because once you have a certain amount of accent colors, a certain amount of vibrant colors, you really want to back off and work with neutrals. Unless you really know, like, you've got a color scheme in mind that's going to work really well. But once we started with this really complicated kind of undead-y kind of skin tone, our options became limited because it is so very muted. Now, I could choose to slide this the other way. If I started putting in more colors and stuff, and I realized that I want to use these other colors, but the skin tone isn't going to work, we could reverse our vampirism and essentially put a couple glazes over this skin to make it more vibrant and more in line with a normal human. And by increasing the saturation of the skin with glazes, we can make it work with more intense colors. Now, you can take this either way. As if you watched the skin session on this model, then you saw that I actually did use glazes to tone down the skin tone to make it look this undead. So, just checking. Oh, you're looking at Brick Daffodwear. I see it. Turgeon. No, an accent color is usually a brighter color used in small amounts at various places on the model to enable to either punch up another color. For example, using red, I have accented the green on the skin tone, or to usually people use it to have a punchy complementary effect, but sometimes you use it to lead the eye around the model, and that's what we're doing here. So we're kind of doing both. I've got the accent color in 3 places. I am going to dim it out like I did down here. I'm going to weather it so that it's not quite as punchy. And that way, just small amounts of it are left pure, like just a little bit at the middle of the loincloth, a little bit at the top of the wraps, and a tiny bit in here. I'm going to be putting, there's a lot of straps inside of this red part that I just painted red over. So once I put the straps in there, you're going to see that there's very little red left to peek out. So, I see people are just being silly in chat. There's no questions for me to answer. Well, great. That means I can just push ahead. Let's see here. Yeah, so we kept that a little bit darker from the Zenith Prime. You can see that the back of the model is generally darker, although we do have some spray coming through. But everything that's kind of tucked in is black still, like the back part of the axe and this part of the skin tone under here. So, alrighty. Let us see what else I want to be purple. There aren't all that many things that I think would be good, but I think the arm guards would work pretty well with that purple. Maybe the wraps on the boots, because I don't think I want a bright red down that far. So that means that our color scheme is really like a red and purple color scheme, which works. It's technically would be a split complementary if we made the purple a little bluer. Yeah, it is kind of a split complementary scheme. We would have to take our purple maybe a little more blue than this for it to be a true, or if you count this as a red-orange, it would work. So it's essentially, if you count the skin tone as a green, then we've got a split complementary where we've got purple, red, green. Or red, orange, purple, green. Anyway, I'm not a big fan of split complementary schemes normally, but that's technically, that's closest to what this is. Alrighty. And it's, take your allergy pill, yeah, Quindy. Hold on, guys. I'm just like very stuffed today. Very stuffed up. Ugh. There, that should be better. Man, I cannot eat like that much carbs for breakfast. Twisted Oma. Like I honestly feel ill if I do. I have to have eggs or I'm kind of a wreck. Or some other protein, but eggs are best. I am an egg fan. But let's see. Okay, so let's mix up our purple. So shark bite. The blue is going to be a bit more overwhelming than the red. So I'm going to use one drop. Let's back out and pull my palette up here. Boop. Ah! Drop the barbarian. Barbarian droppage. Barbarian foul. 1 second while I retrieve him. He actually traveled quite far. This is why it's good to be working with Bones USA. When it falls on the floor and inevitably nothing hurts it. Sadly, the barbarian is not very good against gravity. Apparently his vampiric powers are not advanced enough yet. So I'm going to do 1 drop of shark bite. Ah, that really splurged out, but that's okay. It's about 2 drops. After a while, you just get a feel for how much. And we're going to mix that up. I'm probably going to need to do a little bit different, but we'll see. All right, pop that over there. I still need to get on Reaper and order me some of those bases we're going to need for basing Ed. I didn't swatch this, but obviously I've got the base coat on the back here. If we look at the back of the barbarian, though, I can see plainly that this needs to be maybe a little bit more blue. What happened is that since I didn't have control of the Necromancer purple, I likely got just a little bit more than 2 drops on there. So I'm popping a little bit more blue in there, and that's good. And you don't need to have it perfect, you just need it close enough. So if you can look at the color that you've put down and the color in there, and they look close to you or pretty much identical, then you're good. You don't have to actually ever hit perfect. Especially not on something this small, and when you're going to put highlights and shadows on it. The only thing it might get you in trouble with is you might discover that you need to re-highlight. If we had actually highlighted this purple, then when you add white, that's when you can see the difference in certain amounts of pigment, most likely. So if we had already highlighted and shaded the leather hip protectors, what may have happened then is that when we highlighted it, it really showed that we had a lot more red in it. And when we mix this up, we find out that it actually highlights up with a bit more blue. Those highlights will actually show up as different more than anything. So you may have to touch in some new highlight color to cover the old, should you do this and you don't match the color close enough. As long as it is close enough, though, it doesn't have to be exact. It never has to be exact. People obsess about that. It's one of the excuses they use not to mix colors more often. It really is just an excuse. It's really not that important. Yeah. Oh, for the colors, Prince? Yeah, well, color is my superpower. If there's one thing I'm good at with miniature painting, it's just, I've worked with color since I was a tiny kid. I've loved colors, and I've loved putting them together in different combinations, and so I just ended up with creating an aptitude for myself where my gut just will tell me what's working, what's not, what's close, what's not. I have a pretty good eye for it. I'm not one of those people with super eyeballs, though. I took the super eyeballs test, and I actually don't have the ability to differentiate more colors than a normal human. Which I was sad about, but also kind of happy about, because the problem with having superpowers is that it's very hard for you to relate to people and to teach people who don't have those superpowers. So I'm kind of happy that my vision is as normal as any of you guys's, because that essentially means I'm working from your perspective, and I don't have to imagine your perspective in order to teach you. And I also don't have to worry about my perspective, like me taking things for granted and trying to translate those, and when it doesn't, right? So yeah, muted and saturated. The only thing you have to remember is that if you're going to use muted colors on a model, you've got to mute everything else at least a little. As mentioned, although these technically still aren't a totally bright red, but all of the red that I put down, even the fire red, is slightly muted. So, and when I do use it close to intense, I keep it extremely vanishingly small, like these little tiny bits of super hypersaturated red. And those, as I mentioned, as I fill in some of these straps and I get around the figure and start adding shading and highlighting, those red bits will get muted out even more and cut down in their size. So the answer is you can use a hyper bright color with a very muted color scheme, but usually you want that hyper bright color to be very small and very sharp, very punchy. There are exceptions, obviously. And most of the exceptions I've seen are dealing with OSL, are dealing with lighting effects. Like a muted figure that's being overshown by a very bright yellow-green light. But in that case, like the bright yellow-green light is plainly a light source, and that's why it works. It's still not pleasing. Like for me to look at that color scheme, it's not a pleasing color scheme. It's not one that I would ever want. But at the same time, it works because it's light, so your eyes do translate that. But yeah, in general, when you are starting out, simply make a note that if you are using muted colors that are not neutrals, like grayed out greens or blues or browned out reds, you should keep an eye on how intense or saturated your other colors are. Yeah, right, and that's the problem. If you pass the hue test, your eyes can detect that, other people's can't, and so they're going to fight with you about it, right? You're coming from a perspective that that they can't access, and that's a problem when you're me and you're a teacher. I always try to put myself in the place of my students as far as simplifying things the most simple I could possibly get, breaking them down, because otherwise, you're going to make assumptions, and it won't be an effective teaching tool for some people. And sometimes it still isn't. Sometimes you need to rephrase that, and that's why doing new PDFs on old topics is still useful. Because my understanding and the way I teach things changes through the years, depending on, books I've read, people I've talked to, minis I've seen. And so one of these days you'll come across somebody explaining this topic and you'll be able to understand it because they explain it the way that you need it explained. But yes, if you get into an argument with people, just explain that you have the color superpower. And then pull up the internet page to show them that, no, this really is a thing. I can see more colors than you, and more differences between colors. However, that said, it's important to note that when you're doing color theory with that, it usually doesn't matter. Why? Because most of the world can't see the colors you do. Will it give you a tiny bit of like an advantage? Maybe. It might make some colors like look better to you when you put them together, or to anybody else who can see what you can see. Most people, though, won't see it. So I missed some of this hair, so I'm going to block it in a little bit. Let's actually do the hair highlights. Let's have fun with that. So I mentioned yesterday about ropey hair. It's gotten better since our sculptors first started doing 3D work, but you can still see that this is one of those ropey hair models, right? You can see these little just clumps. And unfortunately, they're rounded and not flat, so I don't have a lot that I can do except to highlight them and try to make them look like hair. The rest of the hair looks much better. As you can see, it's flatter, and it has more strands and not those sharp lumps up here, but you can see those sharp lumps. So, and unfortunately, the beard and mustache, the way that this has been done, is also kind of lumpy, but because it's so small, we'll probably be able to make highlights look okay. What it comes down to is that 28 millimeters are very stylized inherently because their scale. They've had to make compromises in the way that things are sculpted because of the scale to get things to read correctly at this size. So it's not a realistic scale, and it does tend to come off as stylized. So if you embrace that, then you're just fine. It can be frustrating if you're someone who likes realism. But if you like realism, then you look more at Tom Meyer's stuff, which is very hard to paint for an intro painter, but a lot more realistically scaled. But even I get frustrated with that because the eyes are so tiny so as to be unpaintable most of the time. At least without an optimizer at 10 times magnification and really good brush control. All right, so I'm just pretty much, because I saw some of the hair was rubbing off, I'm just putting an additional coat on this to make sure that it's solid. Hi, Sky's Clear. Thank you for the resub. 49 months, one short of Kuroniko. Nobody has surpassed Kuroniko today. She got 50. So my PDF this for color workshop for my $5 Patreon tier this month is going to be taking a color scheme or adapting a color scheme for miniature from a real life photograph. It's a photo I took in Hawaii. I took a lot of cool photos in Hawaii that I wanted to kind of show this kind of adaptation. I'm planning to do another one on adapting a color scheme from a painting, from a work of two-dimensional art. Hey, Carrie Michael 39. It's sub day! It's, you know, maybe, Pendrake, it's possible. I mean, we've seen that evolution can progress much faster than people originally thought. Although I don't know why color would be one of those things, but who knows? Yeah, interesting. Or it could have just been poetic. They did like their poetry. Or maybe they just had a lot of cloudy days. But who knows? Yeah, there's no way to tell that, right? Although, 4,000. Yeah, I guess you really couldn't have been able to tell unless you can analyze painted sculptures that were around then and see, but I don't think there was a really good blue pigment back then except for ground up lapis, maybe. I mean, Egyptians had that, right? Yeah, I don't know. Don't know how you could ever prove or disprove that theory. I think that's maybe an unprovable one completely. I guess maybe you could look at other species where color perceptions are evolving if you could find any and see how that took place. But yeah, I don't think that's provable. Maybe wine was blue. I think there were painted statues 4,000 years ago, right? You said? We're learning that a lot of the Egyptian statues were painted, and Greek statues were also painted. I mean, Egypt was definitely around in 2000 BC, right? And they've been able to trace, but most of it is ochre, like earth pigments, right? That they've been able to find traces of. And yeah, maybe wine was a different color. Who knows, right? It probably wouldn't have been filtered like we do. As much. Who knows? This is all perfect happenstance. Like we're just we're just spitballing here. We're totally spitballing. All right. So do I like that purple there? If I'm going to do purple there, I almost certainly have to do purple here. I'm going to do purple, and if I don't like it, I'm just going to paint over it. But I thought they had chemical processes to find traces of that, Pendrate. Like, if we can analyze the dregs of Mesopotamian drinking cups and reverse engineer a recipe for the alcohol they were drinking then, I feel like we can find traces of pigments on some ancient stuff. I may be wrong. But I would have to spend some time on the internet, and I happen to be painting. I don't want to go to the internet right now. So we've got purple, but we've got purple kind of all in one area. So I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with that. But yeah, let's mix up a highlight for the hair. So shark bite plus white is our answer here, probably with a little bit of something to gray it out, maybe some brown liner in it. I wanted to, if it's truly black, then I want some blue-black highlights. You could also go with brown liner plus white if you didn't want that. I am, well, technically there were pigments used in cave paintings, but those were all ochres and umbers, all the earth chalk pigments. Yeah, I'm not sure what the first, I mean, obviously there was blue inlaid in jewelry that we do have from very long ago, but yeah, I mean, it would be a hard call. It would be a hard call. I'm going to put just a little bit of white. I essentially created a couple drops of shark bite. I added a drop of brown liner, and I added just short of a full drop of pure white. I'm going to mix that up and see if I like it. See if it's the bluish grayish color that I'm looking for. I want something that is going to be a blue-gray enough to highlight the hair with. I think that, yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know. People were decorating their art with stuff, you know, tens of thousands of years ago. So, unless of course you had someplace without like the capability of doing that, and then we have a lot of carvings, right? There we go. That's a pretty nice blue-gray, actually. I think I'm going to use this. And then I'm going to pop a little bit over here, and I'm going to mix a pure white into it, and I'm going to really, really pop it up. I forget which museum I went to or what article I was reading, but they were hypothesizing that Greek and Egyptian statues of old were actually painted pretty garishly, which I thought was funny. There was an artist rendition, and I was like, oh my god, eyesore. Yeah, I think it's just a turn of phrase, Shadow Raven. I agree. Blacker than Quindy's heart. Oh my gosh. Well, then it's just a void, though. Wouldn't everybody get sucked in? Does that make... Maybe that's where Cthulhu came from. I was going to say, like, Krakens could be out there, but an interdimensional Kraken is essentially Cthulhu, so now we understand. All right, so we're going to use these two colors to highlight the black hair. I've still got my black up here, and I did use Dragon Black for this, but it doesn't matter what black you use. The only time it matters what black you use is if you're mixing white into that black to create highlights for it. At that point, should the black have different pigments in it, you will see those emerge very subtly. Dragon Black has some cool pigments in it, some blue and violet, so if you mix a highlight by using pure white into it, you will notice that it has a cooler highlight than, say, normal black. Kiki! 1 second, there is actually something outside. Enough! Enough! Enough. Enough. Stand down. I've got it. Stop it. It's all good. It's all good. Yep. All good, Bob. Yep. All right. We're gonna settle down again. Settle down, please. No. I said settle down. Enough. Yep. Yeah. Thank you for letting me know that somebody dropped a package outside. I heard it. I heard it at the door. Yep. Sorry, y'all. Barky Keeks. That's interesting to me because Egypt was definitely using ground lapis and other cultures were too. And I mean, I guess that if you could show it consistently... No. Across, like... Yeah, it just seems... I guess it's weird. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know enough. I have never read that ever, so... Okay, hair. So we're starting to do, you can see the first highlight there. It's to emulate Quindy. Settle down, Keeks. All gone. Yeah, it's all gone. So that's very strong. So what essentially you can see that brush stroke. That's because I haven't really thinned this to the point where I really should to highlight with it. I think that this is really spitballing. Like, there's no way you could prove or disprove it. You can find evidence, hypothetically, I guess, if there are indeed words, a lack of words for something in a language. But then, even then, how do you know for sure? Because surely records of that language from that time are limited, right? So, it's interesting, though. It's interesting. Yeah, for sure, Sir Gambit. Yeah, history of linguistics of color, right? Yeah, it would be interesting if we really didn't have a lot of color. And it kind of makes sense in a way, but I don't know. It would be interesting if that was true, if we started getting a better grasp of color at some point. Although it seems like the question would be why. But who knows? Could have been a random mutation, right? And again, I question, like, the sources, the amount of sources that you have for that sort of thing have got to be pretty limited. So I'm just going to align a little bit as I'm doing this, but all right, let's grab this blue. I've thinned my blue-gray now so that it won't be quite as harsh as these early brush strokes. Still pretty seeable though, and that's, there we go, that's not bad. Once I got a fair amount of it off my brush. So you can see that this is a little bit more blobby and stronger than these finer strokes, which are I'm able to do that because I've thinned it. The thinning level is about standard for my paint. It's like that. With full paint. Don't forget the stripes. Like there were some crazy striping patterns going on, and general patterns. Yeah. It makes sense that, because our eyes are engineered to see contrast, it does make sense that light and dark would be two of the earliest distinctions. So I'm going to highlight the top of the mustache a little bit, and I'm going to bring my black back into, and I'm just doing it a band. I'm not trying to hit the individual strands. Sadly, this is sculpted pretty protruding, but I'm going to put another highlight down here to kind of get the bottom part of the mouth. I'm going to let it blend in a little bit. It's showing up more on camera than it does in person. Again, that's not a big deal. I'm going to take the black and bring it back over this to break up what I'm doing right now. But I want to get a sense of where my highlights are going to go. So I'm just painting right over, just blocking. I'm just blocking color. Yeah, very few things, yeah, links to actual. That's because I don't think it's possible. Like, I guess it is possible to analyze what pieces of ancient language we do have and look for instances of colors named in speech, right? That's the only way that you could, that's one way you could do a study, quote unquote. But otherwise, it's the sort of thing with how language evolves and how it, like, if you can't find like recorded writings, how are you ever going to really be able to get a snapshot, a comprehensive snapshot of ancient languages? So on the side here, the hair is sculpted a little bit more flat. I'm still kind of just painting over the top of it. Do the same on the other side. We just want to be able to set up. Yeah, and Homer was a poet. Let's not, I think he was a philosopher too and a historian, but it kind of all went together at that point, right? All right, so we've got some highlights coming in. You can see how that brings out the facial hair. It's not just a block anymore. We can see the shapes. Obviously, I've got a lot of blue in there, so I am going to take that down. But first, I want to finish just overall highlighting so that I can come back in with my black and figure it out. So when we've got kind of this whole scrape back from the face look, the hair is poofing up, I can definitely use the blue, but then I don't really have a part until we get back here. So the halo effect's still going to come into effect. I'm going to block in a halo around the edge of the head. I can do that with these strands really well, but up here it's just going to kind of go here. And I do want a little bit of a highlight around the part in the hair, which is right there, just a little bit. So because of the shape of this hair, I'm having to break my halo effect because of the way it's styled. And I put on more highlights than I probably need. And that's, you know, that's just fine. I can always cover these up with black because Reaper Black and most blacks, in fact, these days cover so well. I'd rather just do an overabundance of the blue and then trim it back. Interesting. All right, so now we've got the way the hair dips in. We can see that curve, right? So the highlighting is going to be up around this area, and then we're going to get a shadow. And then we're going to get a little bit more highlight as this hair comes out and catches the light. We're going to mess around with this a little bit stylistically to make it look good, even though it's not technically accurate. Gonna get a little bit of highlight even down on those little strands at the bottom. This is where straight hair is a good model to start with when you're learning to paint hair correctly. Makes it a little bit easier just to figure out where your highlights and shadows are going to go. Curly hair can be very hard. I'll make sure that I have a little bit more highlight here. But yeah, I am definitely overdoing the blue a bit at this point because I want to pick out the hair. Nonetheless, it doesn't look far off of black, right? So we can now I want to look up Kelburn Castle. Humans like bright colors. We're attracted to them. Probably because they used to mean edible things, right? Fruits, berries, things like that. Bright colors are edible. Flowers. Some flowers are edible. All right. So looking at that, we've blocked in all of these highlights here. Now I'm going to come in with some black. I'm going to thin it. I'm going to start kind of paring this back a little bit. Remember that I don't start to actually do like individual strands or trying to be real accurate with that until at least my second highlight. But right now, our job is to take our base black and use it to break up these strands now that I've got my highlights placed. Yeah, or do not touch, right? So I'm re-putting the black in areas which have darker cuts, so more shadow. Breaking up these masses of hair more. I'm also going to trim up some of this, but we'll save that for a little bit. I want to make sure that this is very black, but I am going to keep some of these strands. I am going to bring them up with blue to connect the top and the bottom because I want you to be able to see the hair, right? So if we just choose a couple of strands that are more out in the open, we can carry that effect through. So we're minimizing this just a little. Like I said, the camera really picks up contrast, so it's making this look lighter than it is actually looking on the model. Let's take this black and go in and kind of mitigate some of all of this stuff. And I probably want to do it up here too. If I see any big blobby areas, I'm going to mitigate them up here. But a lot of this is going to be kind of poof, so I may wait to mitigate it and do it with highlights instead of shadows. That's all right. No, enough. Kiki. Come on, Kiki. Come on. Come here. We're fine. Good girl. Yeah, good girl. That's my good girl. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I know. It's so alarming, all these things in the world, and you're so bored. I was right, though, guys. Like, after I started doing the scent work games with her, I should have done one before stream. But after I started doing the scent work games with her yesterday, she was less barky. Now, this, of course, does bring kind of a third color in, but because this is a blue-gray, it tends to read more like a neutral than it does an actual color. It's very easy to just see it as gray. Enough, Kiki. Settle down, or are you going to your crate? But yeah, she just, like, she gets bored, she has too much energy, and the barking expresses the energy. So when I took a couple breaks yesterday to play a search game with her, and she was much quieter as a result. So apparently we need to get a morning session of search game in before the stream. Yeah, do we need to do that? Do I need to whip out the cheese? Alrighty. And I want to break up this a little bit. Although I don't want to accentuate like it enough to make it stripy necessarily. Like, I still want to feel like this is one tuft of hair, and this is far deeper of an indent than you would normally get. So I do want to keep this big space of blue-gray here. Just touching up my black a little bit. I did do his eyebrows, but I missed a spot here. There. Now, you can also do eyebrows if you really want to. Like, you can highlight them. Although, again, at this scale, not necessarily. I would say at this scale, don't do it. Not unless you've got blonde eyebrows that you really want to bring out and make visible, then you could get away with it. I'm gonna just use this moment to block in a little bit more of his eye here. Yeah, all right. Alrighty, now we're gonna go up to our off-white. We're gonna do that, and we're gonna start glazing with some black and color correcting a little. I've already thinned down my off-white. It looks a little bit like Snow Shadow right now, except less blue. It's not really an off-white. What I've ended up with is a light blue-gray right there. Mostly in pubs. Ha 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 ha. reload. My brush got a little persnickety on me there. You're a good girl, Kiki. She's hanging out in the room here with me. So I'm just going to do a tiny bit. Nope, that's enough. Settle down. It's not of concern if I can't hear it. So really tiny highlights, and it's very thin, so it's really not showing up hugely, which I don't want it to show up hugely, so. And get a little tiny, so I'm doing little bitty highlights in the middle of that, although I just think I've got too much blue right there, so I'm going to come in and glaze it with black. And I feel like my placement's a little off too. I feel like I need to move it up a little bit and then glaze it. I want to do purple, but I'm going to shade it down a lot with Brown's Agent Marble. So the purple right now is, I don't do colored undercoats. And the reason I don't do colored undercoats is that I find that the way I paint, I'm just going to cover it up. So it's if you paint with any thickness of paint, or you're going to build up a lot of layers, a colored undercoat won't serve you just like Zenith won't. The only useful thing for it then is to remind you to keep that surface warmer, right? And I wouldn't use this purple as an undercoat color anyway. I would use a blue if I wanted a cold color. But yeah, I'm gonna keep it purple, but I'm gonna take it real bruisey for most of the shading, and then probably just play it down with weathering like this on the highlights. So it'll be much less purple eventually. I want this guy to be a really muted color scheme. We don't do a lot of truly muted color schemes, but I want this guy to get there. That said, you know, right now it's just a placeholder. And again, if I don't like it, I'm just going to paint it over. The easiest thing for me to do here, guys, is not to go purple at all. It's just to go with my brown liner with brown. And just do that. Maybe put some red, a little bit of red into the handle here. But I really don't want more red. I just want this triangle of red. One of the basic rules of art is if you're going to use accents, use them in odd numbers. Or accents or visible objects that stand out. So 3 is easy on a miniature. 5 tends to be pretty easy too if I put some red on these straps down here. But right now I'm just playing with the purple. I like the purple on these hip guards. But I'm not sure I like the purple face up and forward, so I may end up downplaying it or losing it entirely and just doing a little bit of a purple strap through the center here to carry the purple on the hips up to the front. I could also use the purple, if I kill it here, I can use it on the scabbards. I have it already on this front panel, it's just not showing up. But yeah, so I could take this purple out, put leather in, and I may like that a lot better. That's why I painted it in though. Sometimes you just, unless you're digitally painting, like if you Zenith Prime the model and you put a copy of it onto your iPad and you use Procreate to sketch in colors, like then you could pre-test this. But for me, it's easy to just throw the color on there, see if I like it. If I don't like it, I'm going to totally change it. Right now I'm leaning toward totally changing it. But I had to see it. I had to see it to make that judgment call. All right, so let's continue up here. So I'm happy with the way it looks on the top of this head, on the mustache. I need to focus on this beard. I'm going to grab some black. My black is really thinned down right now. I'm going to paint it over the entire lower part just to thin down and minimize some of this blue. Again, it's showing up a lot more on camera than it is off. I'm a little happier with that. And obviously I'm being pretty persnickety, and you don't have to be as persnickety as me. I'm going to grab more of my off-white, or my snow shadow as I'll call it. Yeah, there's no real reason to do that, Agent Marvel. There's no real reason to keep it. I mean, with acrylics, you can cover up stuff so easily that changing colors is just something that I do when I'm exploring a model. As you guys know, when I'm painting for you, I tend to, well, if I was writing, they would call it writing into the darkness, like, which means you have no idea what you're going to write when you sit down to write. So I tend to come to these things with maybe one color in my head, and then I just paint into the dark. I just see what develops as I go. I didn't think I was going to put purple on this model, but there it is. So just trying to get the ones on this side didn't come out in the casting as nice. The hair pieces over here as on the other side. So I'm having to do a little paint plastic surgery over here, I think. The pub on in downtown Mountain View is, I think, Molly McGee's, but I do not remember. But that's much better than X Tavern. But yeah, I definitely feel like more than okay about changing a color. If you put it down and you don't like it, there is no reason on earth, considering how fast base coating is, there's no reason on earth not to change it. You're going to be much happier with the result. I mean, the only thing that it can serve as if you don't change it is a reminder of that's a bad color combo, you know. And chances are you're going to remember that anyway next time it pops up because you're dissatisfied with it this time. I need to separate out those strands. But yeah, that's why I never understood people like being like tentative about putting a color on. It's like, just put it on. If you don't like it, paint over it. This is the magic of acrylics. Instead of oils, we don't have to wait. We can just like paint over it the minute it's dry. Oh, there are Holmesians everywhere. What is it? The Baker Street Irregulars. Isn't that the Sherlock Holmes fan club's organization? They're everywhere. That's pretty cool, though, Pendrake, that they had one in Texas. I didn't know that. Yeah, Roger. I have a lot of writing to do today. I've almost gotten out of the part of the book that I hate. I'm always slow on beginnings. Oh, we got some rub off there. Notice I'm getting more rub off from a primed figure than I normally do with an unprimed figure, by the way. It's interesting to me. So I'm going to come in with some full strength black. Touch that up. Though to be fair, I didn't prime black, the base coat. I only primed the white over the top. Because I still don't necessarily trust... Although maybe I did for this one, because the Siocast is different. It'll take primer better. Don't remember. I've slept since then. Hypothetically, the Siocast should be okay to prime. I don't know. What is you guys' experience with Siocast with Bones USA? Okay to prime? Just adjusting some lining as I go. Yeah, that's what I typically do, Agent Marvel, but I wondered if people knew if it was okay for priming. I don't remember if I actually did use black primer on this one. Most often, if I'm going to do a Zenith on Bones, I actually just use black paint. I go over the entire model, and then I prime white over the top. So nobody's primed it, huh? Maybe I'll have to grab one of my Bones model, or my Siocast models that I don't care about, or plan to use for a stream, and throw primer on it to see. Okay, so you haven't had problems priming. Oh, you use an airbrush and brush on sealer. I see. Yeah, I'm looking for anybody who's used a spray primer on it. So now we are focusing our highlights more. Got a little bit, I feel like I'm a little thin here. There we go. I want that feeling of light. Just because it's black hair doesn't mean it shouldn't come up then. And the higher you bring it up, the shinier it's going to look. You see how that's looking now? Yeah, there's no PVC, right? I compared it in my prep video to resin, which I pretty much stand by. It works, it seems to be, as far as its the consistency of the material and the way I treat it, it's most like resin. Cast resin, not 3D print. So it's going to start a big new project for my Patreon, but I think I'm going to have to wait till NaNoWriMo is over before I do it. So I'm bringing up the highlights here. I see, Agent Marvel. That's good. Well, then good. Yep. Well, I'll put a note on that in my PDF then for the video I did yesterday. Thanks, guys. So we're putting real thin. Now is where I'm starting to bring out the hair strands. You see that? So now we can start to get that a little bit more. All those, the little strands. There isn't much room on these tiny, tiny strands. So if you can't put in the multiple strands on one of these that I am, just because you don't have the brush control, don't sweat it. Just do it by the locks. It'll still look pretty good. But yeah, I want to do, Patreon has a means now to put up digital content for sale so that even people who are not patrons can purchase it. And I had thought a while about this, but I think that I'm going to do a series on dragons and put that up as a for sale item. Like a really intensive series on dragons. Trash. If you swatch them onto a card and then send me a picture, I might be able to help you. Make sure to put a line of black in there too above the swatches though, so that your camera can capture, or adjust them until they look more or less. I might be able to help you with that. Yeah, dragons are just too much to tackle on something like this type of format, and they're too much to really do a Patreon series about, except to just touch on little things. But if I did a series of videos, I could do different colors. I've got those dark sword dragons. I've also got another thing that only Kroniko and Quindy know about, and it's gonna stay that way. Don't tell. No loose lips. Loose lips sink dragon ships. Because if I told everybody about it, I would lose enthusiasm for it, and you don't want me to lose enthusiasm for it, so it's a secret. Paint 1 red scale and 9 easy steps. That's kind of my thing, but yeah, but if I were going to do like a series, because part of this is satisfying me, right? And I want to, if I'm going to tackle this subject, I want to really tackle it. And that's going to mean a lot of time investment. But I don't think I have the ability to do that while NaNoWriMo is going on. I know I don't. So I'll have to add that to my schedule for after Nano. Can use this purple to shade some of this red part that I didn't get. There we go. All right, so that hair is starting to look good. Yes. Yes, if you keep your lips sealed, girls, then maybe I'll send you some work in progress pictures. But I do have some, that said, I do have some stuff. Like I have to get my brother's Christmas present done before Christmas, obviously, so... Yeah, it's probably going to be a New Year type of project. And I'm going to have to really start orchestrating my month. Like, usually I keep myself pretty loose with my planning, and everybody's very different with how much planning they can tolerate or that they reach for that's constructive for them. Some people, myself included, work better on flexibility than on a set plan, but at the same time I need a little bit of structure to keep me on track. So usually I have a list of things that I need to get done in a given month, and I kind of loosely slot them in, but I give myself some leeway. So I need to essentially, if I'm going to take on this new project, I need to find a place to slot it in that I'll be happy with. Yeah, so you notice that the smoother the hair, the less texture there is, the more you get that kind of united highlight, right? And you can see that on my own hair. Like if you look at the going up the part, right? Then you can see that smooth sheen that you can't really see break up. But then if you look at my hair on the side of my head, then you see more breakup, right? So that's what we're emulating here, is that the back of his hair here, this is very smooth and tight on his scalp. But everything else, where we're getting these big strands, that's more like my hair on the sides. So it's more strandy equals more texture, and so we're using more individual highlights instead of the more of a smooth band of highlight that we've got going at the top here. And that's just giving your viewer information, right? Highlights are really where you give the viewer information on the nature of the surface they're looking at. And you do that via highlights, via how you highlight, via the texture that you highlight. This is Nano. Yes, this is Nano. That's why I'm working on North of the Wind. I'm a little bit behind because of the first week being my dog show thing. So, okay, let's do what I said we were going to do before, and let's take some of the darker blue-gray and use it to connect these two things. So I'll take a couple of the strands that are more sticking out, and I will bring that highlight down. And then I'll take it, maybe this one here, and maybe this one here. And by doing this, we don't so much like, we don't lose like, oh, this is a bit much, so I'm going to bring some black in. We keep our color of black, but we break it up and show the continuation with those strands. So my challenge in doing this is to keep enough black that the hair still looks black. Yeah, Nano's beating me up a bit because the start of the book for me is always slow. and I had that travel. So together. So I broke up that a little bit, but see, I've just thinned it down. But yeah, for me, endings are easy, but starts are hard. Once I get the characters in motion, like, and everybody's, like, diving in, then everything becomes a lot easier for me. But starting is always my slowest part. Setting up the characters and getting them where I want them to be. Once we get there, everything starts churning along merrily. Not to say I don't get, blocked sometimes if I have to stop and think about a story and where it's going. Actually, that one of the writing books I have says exactly that, Richard. But I don't like that. I find that the reason I don't do that is that my brain iterates on new ideas based on what I'm springboarding off of. So what works better for me is to start the book, as hard as it is for me to work from that rough beginning, to start it and then to gain insight as I go. Because sometimes when I'm fighting with that beginning, it will give me seeds that actually will pay dividends down the line. I'll lose that if I start at a perceived middle. It gives me less time to discover right. Remember, I'm more of a discovery writer. So if I was a planner, if I was a very much more of a planner, writing from the middle can really help. But yeah, there is a writer that advocates writing from the middle. He has a system around it. It's very interesting. I did read the book, and it did give me some food for thought. But the first rule of any writing or painting advice is to feel it through and see if it's true for you. And if it's not, then learn what you can from it and put it aside. So now, as I write this book, I will go back and change the beginning to make it more true to the ideas I'm getting as I move along. Because things will, as I mentioned yesterday, I usually have I know where the story's going. I know what the characters' outcomes will be in general from day one. But how they get there is always surprising to me. And if I let myself do that, if I let myself work through that rough beginning to get really, really to a point where I'm going forward, I get better ideas. Like, I get more unpredictable ideas. Yes. Yeah, I give you a starting. Yeah. So starting from the middle is very valid. It just depends on how your brain works. Some people, it works great for them. And a lot of people start from the end and write backwards. Oh, sorry. Got out of range on the camera because I'm so close. So I'm just bringing in some of the light here now on the side of the head. Oh yeah, Dungeon 23, yep. Yeah, it's hard to do that psychologically unless you really understand what people... Yeah, the problem is if you make it too real, then it triggers your players, right? So... It's easy to go gore fest with it, but that's probably the safest way to do it. Right, and to make it just everywhere is a hazard. I mean, you could take some tricks from Diablo, actually. I felt like it was pretty horrifying. Add lava. Probably, if you're trying to just impart danger, it depends on what you mean by hell, right? If you want it, if what you're looking for with hell is the danger level of being in a different and demonic dimension, I think Diablo did it really well, but you'll have to sacrifice somebody to do it, like a character. So we're getting a little bit of temple magic here. This is a lot of gray, so I'm gonna have to tone this back to make it look black. Otherwise he'll look like he has graying hair, which is not in line with a vampire. And that's why I'm gonna probably end up doing a glaze on a lot of this stuff up front, because it's pretty potent at this point. But yeah, so no spoilers, but like one of your companion characters is like just slaughtered just incidentally for stepping a little bit off the path to look at something in Diablo, the new Diablo. And it really brings home, because this guy is not easy. He's not easy to kill. So the fact that a one mistake essentially kills him, like, it really brings home that danger, right? So, but it depends on like what you're trying to do, right? If you're playing, some people run very psychological games, and I don't enjoy playing in those, just because it is a little bit triggering. But if you're looking for that, then it's going to be the like knowledge of your players, right? Make sure that, I guess one thing you could do is limit resources too. But most games don't revolve around like having enough to eat and drink. Most players don't think about it. So if you're going to do that, then you've got to tell them at the beginning you have a very limited amount of food and water, and it'll last this long, right? X number of days. Anyway, those are all things that you could experiment with. Yeah, when you played that part and you don't remember it. It's at the very end where the remember the dad of the kid who the demon takes over? And he's like, you know, a big time adventurer in the olden days. But it's when everybody's in hell and he just like steps off the path to look at one of those cool pillars, and the pillar essentially eats him. So yeah. It's near the very end. Yeah. So that kind of threat, like having an NPC that you know is pretty powerful, who's maybe an advisor, and then essentially having that new room or dimension just totally just own them, can give a good sense of danger without compromising a party member directly. You do remember it. Oh, resource management is important. All right, yeah. Well, then you can play into that, because obviously in hell you're not going to necessarily be harvesting, food. You won't necessarily be able to eat the wildlife, and there's probably not much water, unless you're on the 8th plane. Then it's icy, I hear. All right, so we've got the hair looking actually pretty good, and as long as I make, this is one thing we need to bring up about contrast. So right now, that black hair, even with all of its blue-gray, is still the darkest thing on the model, right, as far as I'm painting stuff. As long as that stays the closest to black, I can highlight it pretty liberally and it will still look like black hair. Whereas if I were to paint something else on this model black, say I wanted to make the blade obsidian or something, or a black slate, then I'd be in trouble, because chances are I'd be using less highlights on this, and then it would look darker than the hair, and then the hair is going to start to look dark blue-gray. So contrast is important when you're doing black hair or something like that. If you want it to really look black, but you're highlighting it a lot because there's a lot of texture, think about what your other colors on the model are. If you have put the entire model in black, and then you're trying to do this sort of hair, it's going to be very difficult to do this color and carry it off, because there's so much detail sculpted onto the hair that you need to highlight. It's going to be a real fight back and forth to get that to look right. But yeah, the trick with that sort of thing, Crowley, is that if you make it too lethal, then your party just dies. But of course, steamrolling fights one on top of the other can deplete the resources of the party pretty effectively. Alrighty. But yeah, it just depends. The game system matters too, right? Some game systems are going to be more superhero character based, and some are going to be more gritty. So, good luck. Alrighty. I think the next thing is just a tiny bit of more of a white. The thing is that I could stick to this light gray for this highlight, and it really does look like a final highlight on the hair, because the hair is so very dark. But I think I'm going to do that glaze over the front here now, over all of this area to darken it down a little bit. Yeah. Sure, Crowley. Have a great day. Good luck with your dungeon. Ah, yeah. Yeah, geometries is another good. Especially if you can use like a word or a mindset as a trigger. Like whenever they really try to go in a particular direction, they can't get there. But whenever they just like walk randomly, they do get there. Stuff like that. Yeah, mess with their heads. Oh, I didn't say that. Yep. It's some good writing, right? Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. There's the rub. Aye, there's the rub. All right, I'm going to grab some black. I'm going to build a black glaze. I want it to be fairly strong, almost wash-like. So when I bring that together, as I'm dropping things, but not the model this time. So this is right now more of a wash. So you can see how dark. Remember that as it pulls off the side here, this is what it's going to look like going over the highlights. So this would take the highlights down a lot. I don't really want that. So I'm going to pop another drop of water into it, and I'm going to test it here. This is good. I want a heavier glaze, so I want to actually see it. Because I just want to do one layer and I want it to darken down those highlights substantially. If you are not me and you do not have a great grasp of how much a given glaze or wash is going to impact your top highlights after you do them, then go thinner. Pardon me while I have to get Mr. Barbarian's name tag off the floor here. But then go thinner because you can always add another layer. Otherwise, if you take it too dark, you'll have to re-highlight. That's the worst case scenario, and it's really not that bad of a case. All right, so now that I've got that, I don't need it on the back of the hair because the back of the hair looks convincingly black with good highlights to me. But because of all, and this side is actually pretty good too, but because of all this light in the front, I think I'm going to glaze it and then I'm going to paint over it. So I want, where's my short fat brush? Series 7 miniature, which is more of a wedge shaped brush with shorter bristles, but it is pretty good for spot glazing. It'll carry a fair amount of fluid in this fat little brush, but it has a good tip. And you know that it's a glaze when you've broken it. So if I look at this now, see those watermark lines here? See that watermark? Those coffee stain marks are the sign that you have broken the paint. If I wanted to get around that, then I would have added some medium to the glaze, but I usually don't like how glazes feel with medium. So I just execute with them in a way that means that I won't have to worry about that. And here, with all this texture, it's not going to matter. It's also small sections that I'm going to be going over with like 2 or 3 brush strokes. So it's really not going to matter. So I'm adding in, you can see that's darkened down that a little bit. Loading up with a little bit more glaze. That has taken it down. You can see how much darker that has gone. I'm going to actually take my brush and make sure I don't have anything pooling because these are very deep cuts to create this hair texture, and certainly stuff can pool in them. This needs more help over here. And that's taking that down as well. Let that dry. The thing about a glaze is if you paint it on thin enough and you don't pool it, it does dry almost instantaneously because it's so very thin. So that is looking a lot more convincingly black. All right. There's a little necklace there under his hair, little band of it there. Probably this amulet hanging down here is attached to it. I can only see it on that one side, so I just put a line there to kind of remind myself that it's there. Now I'm gonna do a re-highlight over these areas, keeping it real small and tight. I think I might actually need to add a little more white to my light blue. Add just half a drop. Mix it in. It's gonna make my paint a little more solid. If I need to do pinpoint highlights, I want that, because if I'm doing tiny little accent highlights, then the stronger the paint, the more those are gonna show up. Yeah, it did go fast. Agree. I'm gonna have to get my brain in gear and start writing soon. I had to take the Keeks for her walk and then make some lunch and then dive into all the stuff I gotta do this afternoon. Gotta work on the PDF for the companion PDF for the video also. Lots to do. This week has gone very quickly. That's too much. So if it's too much, water. Take it right off. Pull off the water. Let it dry. So that tells me I need to be very, very careful. I need to pull all of this water off now, or it's not going to dry very quickly. I have to be very, very careful with this color. And I'm mostly marking the line of the mouth by highlighting this lower lip beard. Sadly, he does not have a real lower lip. He only has a beard. Beard lip. Bloodbeard beard lip. Indeedy. All right. So there's a lot of stuff that's kind of running together here. Once I do these little hair bands, then it's going to define the face a little bit more. I probably will make those red, since that's my accent color. And this kind of tiny little detail is just the kind of thing you want an accent color applied to. But that's not too bad. I feel like I need a little bit more black. But that way the shadow on the underside of his mustache and the highlight of the top of that beard let me give him an expression even though his mouth isn't visible. I have CrossFit tonight. CrossFit is canceled the entire week of Thanksgiving. I don't know what I'm going to do. I might have to actually drive out and buy a kettlebell so I can do something myself. Having just skipped a week, I'm not really thrilled with the idea of skipping a week again. Yeah, this might be a little bit too strong, this color I have, this white, off-white. Maybe not. I guess it's okay. I just have to keep it so small. There, and we can see his mustache. I'm going to do just a little bit of highlight on the bits of this hair. There. That's a little better. The beard proper is very difficult because these bands are really big. It's hard to do a realistic texture on them. So it's definitely making it difficult for me to keep it black. And to still make it look realistic like hair. I may just have to settle for that. But now that looks a lot more black. The glaze helped take down a lot of the intermediate gray blue that was flooding the area, and the hair looks definitely black. So that's good. Let's just I want to pop some white into his eyes. I want to pop some white onto those little bands binding his beard. And pop some red onto those as our final step for the day. Yeah, I have a lot of plans this year. I need to, for the coming year, I need to lay that out a little bit more. I think now that I'm back from all my travel, really prep a list for the coming year. And I have some 3D printing I want to do before it gets too freaking cold, since our printer's in the garage. I got a bunch of tasty STLs off of Lord of the Print during their last sale, their 50% off sale. It was too cheap. I couldn't ignore it. Too cheap. Oh, probably went a little bit thin with that white. Sure. Thank you, children. Thank you. Oh, Kiki says it's time. Enough. No. You know. Come on. You're fine, see? Right. Good girl. She's learning. She's getting there. All right, I've got my white. I'm going to just try to brighten up these little bands really, really bright, so that I remember to paint them a really a bright accent color, probably my fire red. And I'm going to also get his eyes. I might make his eyes red, although the problem is these heavy brows. I think I mentioned that before. The heavy brows mean that you can't really do a glow effect, and making a color in there might be hard. We'll see how well these the eyes show up once I fill in the orbits with this white. Because right now it's Mr. Shadow Gaze, which is cool and vampire-y and all, Papa, but not really what we're aiming for. So let's get the white in here. The real eyes are also much smaller than I thought. Once you've filled in the orbit and you try to bring that stripe over the ball of the eye, you get a real feel for how big the eyes actually are. And these eyes are actually quite small, which also makes it difficult, because if you're going to do them a color, you really want more than this to carry that color. We'll see. So that's the white of one eye filled in. Yeah, arthritis sucks. Let's see here. We're going to go on the other side here. Oh, I lost my lower lid. I'll have to reapply that. So you can see that lower lid on the other side has gotten wiped out, so we're going to have to go back in. Yeah, these eyes are very, very small. Bobby usually does bigger eyes. But this guy's got beady eye syndrome. Just going to repaint it and redo it. Ah, Reaper Live tonight. Cool. You know that's considered to be like one of the highest forms of like meditation, right? Is imagining your like a fog of pain and like having it like melt away like a shell around your heart, and then have gold light washing that pain and sending it to all the people across the world like you that hurt in the same way. I learned that last night. I was listening. Apparently it's something the Dalai Lama talks about. It's like an ultimate compassion type of exercise, and it helps you get out of your own head too. Kiki, we're talking about compassion, not about borking. Not about borking. We're not talking about that. Either that or Kiki was endorsing it, but I don't think so. So there we go. So we've got, look at those tiny eyes. All right, no way am I going to be able to do a red color coming out of those. Yeah. Well, send your healing energy, your sympathy healing energy to everybody else who also has a fog of pain. I'm sure there are a lot of people. It can help you feel like just better, brain-wise. I know I'm into meditation and many people aren't. So if it's not you, don't do it. But it can be cool. It's a good compassion builder. All right, just noticed a spot that I got some primer didn't go into. All right, so we've gotten the hair set for the most part. The eyes are tiny. We'll have to figure out what we're going to do with those. Send it all, take more. Take more. You send it along with rain. Suddenly somebody on the other side of the world is like, I feel suddenly better. Oh no. But my picnic. Oh man. All right, cool. So there we go, guys. We've got that hair more or less highlighted. I may go back and revisit parts of it. Maybe the top of the head there. But it's at least in a soft finish state, so we can move on from it. Yeah, I'll probably paint over that purple next time and add like little purple, like a little purple here across this bandolier and a little purple on these little wraps on the feet, and go with a brown here instead. Figure out what kind of browns we can mix well with our limited palette. Yeah, we're supposed to get rain next week. I'm looking forward to it. Our roof got fixed while I was gone at the dog show, so that's good. No leaking. I don't need my bucket in here anymore. Apparently there was a pipe that went up through the roof, that there was a seam that was violated. So, but there we go. So he's looking pretty cool, actually. I like him. But yeah. So, and this is a chonky model, and it's not the kind of like model I would normally have grabbed, but actually he's a really good sculpt. He's got a lot going on, so it's an interesting sculpt. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Tomorrow, Friday, the Friday edition of Reaper Pro Tips, we'll be working on Autumn Lady again. Yay! We were working on highlighting up her leather. We've also got we've got that to worry about, and we've got a lot of gold to do on her as well. Her hair also hasn't been touched. So we'll be doing some of that, depending on how I feel. And there's like trim around her hood too. So we've got a lot of gold trim to do on her. I'm pretty happy with how the leather has come up, though, so we'll just work with that. Chonkulus the vampire. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Pendrake. Exactly. So there we go. So we're going from vampire, we're going from red to green. Red to green, we're going complementary. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day, and yay, we're getting to the weekend, and that's fantastic, too. Have a great one, and I will see you tomorrow.